Federal agent Boots crunched frozen November leaves as he approached the weathered cabin, hidden deep in Six Rivers National Forest. Walter Hayes, 73, stood motionless on his porch, white beard catching pale morning light through towering redwoods. Behind him, through the half-open door, something massive shifted in shadows. "Mr. Hayes," Special Agent Miller called, breath forming clouds in bitter cold. "We need to talk about what you've been doing out here." Walter's weathered hands gripped wooden railing. Pale blue eyes, sharp despite his age, studied three agents emerging from fog-shrouded forest trail. 42 years he'd kept his secret. 42 years of silence, isolation, dedication to a promise made in blood. Now, as November wind howled through Bluff Creek's ancient trees, everything was about to unravel. "You got no jurisdiction here," Walter said quietly, voice hoarse from years speaking only to one listener. "This is my land." "Actually, sir," Agent Miller stepped closer, hand near his holster, "you're squatting on federal property, have been since 1983, but that's not why we're here." Massive shadow behind Walter moved again. Miller's eyes widened, catching a glimpse of something impossible. Training told him draw his weapon. Instincts screamed run. "Jesus Christ," whispered Agent Torres, youngest of three, face draining color. "Is that—" "Easy now." Walter raised weathered hands slowly. "Nobody needs to do anything stupid. He won't hurt you unless you threaten him. Or me." Creature emerged from cabin darkness like nightmare stepping into reality. 8 feet tall, covered in thick matted fur color of damp earth, with eyes holding intelligence making Miller's blood run cold. Legendary Bigfoot of Bluff Creek, subject of countless hoaxes, stood behind old man in threadbare flannel shirt, real as freezing air burning in Miller's lungs. "Sir," Miller's voice cracked, professional composure shattering, "step away from that creature, slowly." Walter didn't move, instead reached back without looking, and massive creature placed one enormous human-like hand on his shoulder, gesture unmistakably protective, almost tender. Miller had seen guard dogs show less loyalty. "His name is Konah," Walter said, voice steady despite rifles trained on cabin. "Before you do whatever you think you're doing, understand something. I didn't capture him. 42 years ago I saved his life, he saved mine right back. What we have isn't what you think." Temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Behind federal agents, forest gone silent. No birds, no rustling squirrels, nothing but wind and Walter's labored breathing. He was old, tired, scared, but something else in his eyes. Determination. Bone-deep resolve from decades choosing isolation over comfort. "Sir, we have wildlife biologists on standby." Miller tried sounding calm. "Nobody wants to hurt anyone, but that creature needs studying. You've been harboring what might be most significant zoological discovery in human history." Walter laughed, bitter hollow sound echoing through clearing. "Studied, documented. That's what you people always say, before caging them, experimenting on them." He shook his head slowly. "Konah isn't a discovery, not a specimen. He's last of his kind, and I'll be damned if I let you parade him around like some trophy." "How do you know he's the last?" Torres asked. Walter's expression darkened. "Because 42 years ago, I watched hunters slaughter his entire family. Mother, father, 2 siblings. They were camped by Bluff Creek, just living their lives, and drunk hunters from Oregon decided they wanted proof. Shot them all. Every single one. Except Konah. He was juvenile then, maybe 4 feet tall, wounded and terrified. Hunters arguing about who'd get credit, who'd get rich, while his family bled out in dirt. Wind picked up, carrying scent of pine and decay. Konah rumbled low in chest, sound somewhere between growl and moan. Walter reached back again, patting creature's massive arm. "I was forest ranger then," Walter continued. "Different person, different life. I came across scene by accident. Hunters ran when they saw my uniform, left everything behind. Left him behind. This young creature crying over his dead mother, making sounds I still hear in nightmares. Should have called it in. Should have followed protocol. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something I recognized. Grief. Real, human grief. So I made a choice. "You hit him," Miller said. "I saved him. Brought him here to old mining cabin, nursed him back to health, planned to release him, find others of his kind." But there were no others. Bluff Creek used to be their territory, dozens of them, maybe more. But logging, development, hunters. By time I found Konah, he was already alone. Walter's voice cracked. "So I stayed, quit my job, told family I needed isolation after divorce. Nobody questioned it. And Konah and we became something like family." Miller lowered weapon slightly. Story was insane, impossible, yet evidence stood 8 feet tall behind defiant old man. "Mr. Hayes, even if everything you're saying is true, you must understand we can't just walk away. Scientific community, government, they need to know." "Why?" Walter's question cut through cold air like blade. "So they can do exactly what those hunters tried. Turn him into commodity? He's lived 42 years in peace, free, safe. Moment you people get involved, that ends." Konah shifted, moving fully into doorway. In morning light, even more imposing, even more real. Face distinctly primate-like, yet different from any ape or gorilla. Eyes deep and brown, moved between agents with clear wariness. "We have protocols for situations like this," Miller started. "Situations like this?" Walter interrupted, voice rising. "When was last situation like this? This isn't bear in suburb or mountain lion near school. This is sentient life. He understands language, reasons, remembers. He mourns. If you take him, you're not securing dangerous animal. You're kidnapping someone who's done nothing wrong except exist." Standoff stretched. Fog rolled between trees, thick and gray. Somewhere in distance, Raven called out, breaking tense silence. Miller's radio crackled, voice requesting status. He didn't answer. "How did you keep this secret so long?" Torres asked, weapon now lowered. Walter smiled grimly. "Bluff Creek is remote. Konah only comes out at night. I built shelters throughout forest, places he can hide if hikers get close. We have system, and people stopped believing in Bigfoot decades ago. Every hoax, every fake video made truth easier hiding. World decided he didn't exist, so they stopped looking. What do you eat? How survive? Get supplies in Willow Creek monthly. Tell people I'm hermit working on book. They think I'm crazy but harmless. Konah hunts, forages. He's adapted. Survivor." Walter's voice softened. "He's my best friend. Only friend. Has been for longer than most marriages last." Miller's expression shifted, something like sympathy crossing features. But duty remained. "Sir, I need making a call. My superiors need knowing about this. But I want you understanding something. If I report this correctly, maybe we can find solution that doesn't end with Konah and Cage. But you need working with me." Walter studied Agent for a long moment. Decades of isolation made him good judge of character. Saw something genuine in Miller's eyes. But also saw impossible position they were in. Government would never allow this remaining secret. Scientific community would demand access. And Konah would become most hunted creature on Earth. "I'm 73 years old," Walter said quietly. "Probably got few years left, maybe less. I've spent entire adult life protecting him. Every day I wake scared that today's the day someone finds us. And now here you are, telling me trust same government that nearly drove his species extinct." Massive creature placed both hands on Walter's shoulders now, gesture of comfort. In that moment, Miller understood something profound. This wasn't man who captured cryptid. This was father protecting son, friend defending friend. Bond transcended species, transcended logic. "Give me 24 hours, Miller said suddenly. "Don't run, don't hide. Give me 1 day figuring how to handle this without destroying everything you've built." Walter's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse? Then I call this in now, and by sunset you'll have 50 agents, scientists, media trucks surrounding this cabin. Konah will be tranquilized, caged, you'll be arrested. Is that what you want? Choice was impossible. Trust federal agent after 42 years hiding, or fight and lose everything immediately. Walter looked back at Konah, whose ancient eyes seemed understanding every word. Creature made soft huffing sound between acceptance and resignation. 24 hours, Walter agreed, voice barely above whisper. But if you betray us, if you bring anyone else, we'll be gone, and you'll never find us. This forest is bigger than you think. Miller nodded slowly. Fair enough. But Hayes, thank you for what you did 42 years ago, for choosing compassion over protocol. Not many would have made that choice today. As 3 agents retreated into fog-shrouded forest, Walter Hayes remained on porch, Konah's massive presence behind him. November wind carried scent of coming snow. Winter approaching, and with it, unknown. For 4 decades, they'd lived in peaceful isolation. Now, their secret was out. Walter reached back and gripped Konah's enormous hand. Whatever happens, he whispered, we face it together, like always. Creature rumbled softly, sound of agreement and trust, and as sun climbed higher over Bluff Creek, 2 unlikely friends prepared for fight of their lives. 24 hours. The words echoed in Walter's mind as he watched the federal agents disappear into fog-shrouded forest. His arthritic fingers trembled, gripping the porch railing, knuckles white against weathered wood. Behind him, through the half-open door, Konah shifted his massive weight, and the old floorboards groaned under 800 pounds of living proof that legends walked among men. Come inside, old friend, Walter whispered, voice barely audible over the November wind howling through ancient redwoods. We need to talk about what happens next. Inside the small cabin, pale morning light filtered through gaps in log walls, casting striped shadows across decades of accumulated life. Detailed maps covered one entire wall, marking every shelter, every hiding spot, every safe route Walter had painstakingly built throughout 6 Rivers National Forest over 42 years of secrecy. Leather-bound journals filled crooked shelves, containing 42 years of careful observations, detailed sketches and fading memories written in ink that grew fainter with each passing season. In the corner sat Konah's sleeping area, piled high with worn blankets and fragrant pine boughs that the creature gathered himself each autumn. Konah moved slowly to the center of the small room, his massive bulk making the already cramped cabin feel even smaller, almost suffocating. He watched Walter intently with those impossibly intelligent brown eyes that had haunted Walter's dreams for 4 decades, waiting patiently as he always did, always waiting, always watching, always trusting. In their 42 years together, they had developed an intricate language that existed far beyond spoken words. A slight tilt of the head meant caution. A specific gesture meant danger approaching. A particular rumble deep in the chest meant fear or sadness. Right now, Konah's ancient eyes asked the one question Walter found himself completely unable to answer with any certainty whatsoever. I honestly don't know, Walter admitted quietly, sinking heavily into his chair. The same battered chair he'd sat in every single day for 42 long winters of isolation. I don't know what's going to happen to us now. The massive creature settled carefully onto his haunches, his enormous hands resting gently on his knees in an almost human gesture of contemplation. He made a soft huffing sound deep in his chest, concerned and questioning. Walter had heard that exact sound countless times throughout the years, memorizing its meaning like a father learns his child's cries. When Walter had been desperately sick with pneumonia back in the brutal winter of 1997, when he had broken his leg badly in 2003, unable to walk for months, when his estranged daughter had made her final visit in the fall of 2008, standing at the very edge of the forest clearing, absolutely refusing to come any closer, telling him through tears that he was completely crazy to waste his entire life out here in the wilderness for nothing. That federal agent Miller, Walter continued slowly, pulling out his old tobacco pouch with hands that wouldn't stop shaking no matter how hard he tried. He seemed somehow different from the others I've dealt with over the years. Maybe honest, maybe trustworthy. But I've learned that even the most honest men often work for fundamentally dishonest systems. The system won't let you stay free, not once they truly know you're real and what you represent to science. Konah rumbled deep and low in his massive chest, a sound of understanding mixed with remembered trauma. The creature had never forgotten what human guns could do to flesh and bone. Could never forget watching his entire family bleeding out slowly in the cold dirt, while drunk hunters stood over them celebrating their historic discovery, already arguing loudly about who would receive credit and fame and untold riches. Walter rolled his cigarette with practiced motions, buying precious time to think through options that simply didn't exist. Outside the cabin, the November wind rattled the loose windows with increasing violence. Another storm was definitely coming in from the Pacific. He could feel the approaching weather deep in his bones now. The arthritis in his hands and knees had been getting noticeably worse with each passing year. How much longer could he realistically continue protecting Konah like this? How much longer could his aging body survive out here in this brutal wilderness, growing older and weaker, utterly alone, except for a creature that the entire world dismissed as pure myth and folklore? I should have seen all of this coming eventually, Walter said with deep regret, finally lighting his cigarette with trembling fingers. I've been getting careless and sloppy in my old age. I found fresh boot prints near the eastern shelter just last month. Should have immediately moved us to a different location then. Should have known in my gut that someone was out there watching, waiting patiently for the right moment. The truth Walter couldn't quite bring himself to speak aloud was that part of him felt utterly exhausted by it all. 73 years old, living in complete isolation from human society, lying constantly to every single person he had ever known or cared about. His ex-wife Margaret still thought he was completely insane, probably institutionalized by now. His only daughter Karen hadn't spoken a single word to him in 17 long years of silence. His grandchildren didn't even know he existed at all. All of this sacrifice, all of this pain, all to protect one singular creature from a world that would inevitably cage him, study him like an insect, and ultimately destroy everything that made him beautifully free. But when Walter lifted his weary eyes and looked directly at Konah, sitting there patiently in the soft morning light, he saw something far more than just a creature or an animal. He saw the terrified juvenile crying desperately over his murdered mother's cooling body 4 decades ago. He saw the years of slow learning, cautious growing, hard-won trusting. He saw the brutal winter Konah had saved Walter's life from certain hypothermia, carrying his unconscious body nearly 2 full miles through a howling blizzard when Walter had fallen through thin ice on the frozen creek. "Do you remember when I first brought you to this cabin?" Walter asked softly, smoke curling lazily toward the rafters. "You were so small back then. Well, small for you anyway. Still bigger than any dog I had ever seen in my life. Absolutely terrified of everything and everyone. It took several months before you would let me touch you even once, without flinching away in fear." Konah made a distinctive soft vocalization, something halfway between a melodic chirp and a low hum. Agreement. Shared memory crossing the impossible barrier between species. A sudden sharp knock on the cabin door shattered the peaceful moment like breaking glass. 3 deliberate, forceful raps. Walter's heart seized painfully in his chest. Far too soon. Agent Miller had explicitly promised 24 full hours. It had been barely 3 hours since the agents had left. Konah was instantly on his feet, moving with surprising speed toward the back room and the emergency escape route Walter had secretly built years ago, specifically for moments exactly like this. But Walter quickly raised his weathered hand. "Wait, friend. If it was the federal agents returning, they definitely wouldn't bother knocking." He approached the door with caution, his right hand moving near the old revolver mounted by the frame. Through the grimy window, he could see a figure he didn't recognize. A woman, mid-40s, civilian clothes. No uniform, no gun visible. Walter opened the door a crack. "Can I help you? Mr. Walter Hayes?" The woman's voice was steady and professional, My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a cryptozoologist from UC Berkeley. Agent Miller contacted me privately. May I come in? Cryptozoologist, Walter repeated, the word bitter. So Miller broke his promise already. He didn't break anything, Doctor, Chen said firmly. He called me privately, not through official channels. Said there was an unprecedented situation requiring expertise and discretion. I drove from the Bay overnight. Please, Mr. Hayes, I'm not here to hurt anyone. Walter studied her exhausted face. Coffee stain on her jacket, mud on her boots. She'd come fast, unprepared. You don't know what you're asking to see. Miller said it was important, that you'd been protecting something for decades. She met his eyes. I've spent my entire career studying cryptids. If there's even a chance of what Miller described being real, I need to see it with my own eyes. Behind Walter, Konah rumbled low. The creature had moved to the doorway, visible now in morning light. Dr. Chen's eyes went impossibly wide. Her breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered in pure shock. "You're actually real. You're really, truly real." Konah tilted his head, studying this new human with careful attention. "His name is Konah," Walter said with resignation. "And before you start thinking about papers and press conferences, understand something. He's not a specimen. He's family. My family." Dr. Chen couldn't look away. "May I please come inside? I won't touch anything, won't take photos. I just need to see, to understand." Something in her voice stopped Walter. Not greed. Wonder. Pure wonder. 1 hour, he said, opening the door wider. You get 1 hour, then you leave. And whatever you tell Miller, you make damn sure it protects him. Dr. Chen stepped inside carefully. Konah watched her approach, body tense. Walter had never allowed strangers this close. "He's magnificent," Dr. Chen breathed, stopping 10 feet away. "Separate evolutionary branch we never knew existed. He's not a puzzle to solve," Walter said sharply. "He's a person, understands language, has memories, preferences, fears. You want to study something? Study why humans always need to categorize everything." Dr. Chen pulled out a notebook, hands shaking. "I'm sorry. You're absolutely right." She looked at Konah. "Thank you for allowing me in your home." Konah made a soft sound, surprised. Not many humans had acknowledged him as equal. Dr. Chen smiled through tears. "How long have you been together?" 42 years this November. Found him when he was juvenile. Hunters killed his entire family. Mother, father, 2 siblings. Wiped out in one night for proof. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. "Humans are monsters sometimes." "Sometimes," Walter agreed. "But sometimes they make a choice to protect. That's why I'm showing you this. Because Miller said I could trust you." "The scientific community will want access," Dr. Chen said carefully. "DNA samples, behavioral studies. You must know this." "Scientific community can go to hell," Walter shot back. "You know what happens when science gets involved? Laboratories, cages, electrodes. Konah lived free 42 years. He'll die free. That's not negotiable." Dr. Chen was quiet, watching Konah. "What if there were others?" she asked softly. "What if Konah isn't the last?" Walter's heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" "There have been sightings, consistent ones. Northern California, Southern Oregon, Washington State, most dismissed as hoaxes. But I've been tracking patterns for 15 years. Footprints, audio recordings, thermal imaging, something is out there. Multiple somethings." Hope and fear warred in Walter's chest. "You're saying there might be others of his kind still alive?" "I'm saying it's possible. But if the government gets involved the wrong way, if this becomes a media circus, any others will disappear forever. Go deeper into wilderness where we'll never find them." Dr. Chen looked at Walter intensely. "But if we're careful, if we control the narrative, maybe we can protect them all, create a sanctuary, not a zoo, not a laboratory, a real sanctuary." Walter wanted desperately to believe her, but 42 years had taught him to trust nothing. Why should I trust you with his life? Because I've been where you are, Dr. Chen said quietly. I spent 3 years protecting a wolf population in Montana being illegally hunted, risked my entire career, my reputation. Because I believe some things matter more than human convenience. Konah suddenly stood, moving toward Dr. Chen. Walter tensed, but the creature's body language wasn't aggressive. Curious. He stopped 5 feet away, leaning down, studying her face. Dr. Chen held perfectly still. He's deciding if you're trustworthy, Walter said. He's better at reading people than I am. Konah reached out slowly, one massive hand extending. Not threatening, offering. Dr. Chen looked at Walter, who nodded. She raised her hand. Their fingers touched. Konah rumbled soft and approving, then turned and moved back to his corner. Dr. Chen's hand trembled. He accepts you, Walter said, relief flooding his voice. That's rare. What happens now? Now we have 21 hours left, Walter said grimly, and we figure out how to save his life before time runs out completely. Outside, the November wind picked up intensity, carrying the first snowflakes of the season. Winter was coming to Bluff Creek. And with it, the greatest challenge of Walter Hayes' long and isolated life. The phone call came at dawn. Agent Miller's voice crackled through the old landline Walter had installed decades ago for emergencies. Hayes, we have a problem. My superiors want immediate extraction. They're sending a team at noon. Walter's blood ran cold. Through the cabin window he could see Konah foraging near the tree line, completely unaware that the world was closing in. Doctor. Chen sat at the wooden table, her laptop open, typing furiously on a document she claimed would change everything. You promised 24 hours, Walter said, his voice shaking with rage and fear. I know. I'm sorry. Someone leaked. There's already speculation online, blurry photos from yesterday. The brass is panicking. Miller paused. But Chen's proposal might work. If we move fast. Walter slammed the phone down and turned to Dr. Chen. Tell me you have something. Anything. She looked up, exhaustion and determination mixing in her eyes. I have a contact at Fish and Wildlife, former colleague who owes me. If I can get Konah classified as an endangered species before noon, they can't just cage him. There are protocols, legal protections. That's insane, Walter said. How do you classify something science doesn't even acknowledge exists? Emergency provisional status, Dr. Chen explained quickly. It's rarely used, but it exists for exactly this situation. When a potentially extinct species is rediscovered, there's a 48-hour window where emergency protections can be enacted before full verification. It was created for situations like the coelacanth discovery. And after 48 hours? Dr. Chen's expression darkened. Then we fight like hell to make the protections permanent. But it buys us time to build a case, rally support, create public pressure for sanctuary instead of captivity. Walter moved to the window, watching Konah. The creature was examining something on the ground, probably fresh elk tracks. He moved with such grace despite his size, so perfectly adapted to this forest. The idea of him in a cage, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by cameras and scientists, made Walter's stomach turn. What do you need from me? Walter asked quietly. Documentation. Everything you have. Journals, photos, behavioral observations. Proof that Konah is sentient, intelligent, deserving of protection beyond simple wildlife status. Dr. Chen stood, urgency in every movement. And I need you to trust me. Completely. Because what I'm about to do could destroy my career if it fails. Walter turned from the window. At 73, he had nothing left to lose except Konah. His career was long over. His family had abandoned him. His reputation was already ruined. But Dr. Chen was young, accomplished, with everything ahead of her. Why are you doing this? He asked. You just met him yesterday. Why risk everything? Dr. Chen smiled sadly. Because last night, while you both slept, I watched Konah cover you with a blanket when you got cold. I watched him move your coffee cup away from the table edge so you wouldn't knock it over. I watched him grieve, Walter. He was looking at old photos you have on the wall, photos of his family you took before they died, and I saw him cry. Real tears. That's not an animal. That's a person, and I won't let them treat him like a specimen. Walter felt his throat tighten. He'd never shown those photos to anyone. Konah must have taken them out during the night, something he did when he was sad or scared. The journals are in the cabinet, Walter said, pointing. 42 years of daily entries. Take whatever you need. The next 3 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Dr. Chen photographed pages, made phone calls, sent encrypted emails to colleagues she trusted. Walter gathered every piece of evidence he'd collected over 4 decades. Hair samples, footprint casts, audio recordings of Konah's vocalizations, video footage from the security cameras he'd hidden throughout the forest. At 9 a.m., Walter went outside to bring Konah back to the cabin. The creature sensed immediately that something was wrong. He made a low, questioning rumble. "We have to fight, old friend," Walter said quietly in their private space among the trees. "The humans know about you now. Some want to cage you, but some want to protect you. We have to trust the right ones." Konah's ancient eyes studied Walter's face. Then slowly, deliberately, the creature reached out and placed one massive hand on Walter's shoulder. The gesture was clear: together. Whatever comes, together. Back in the cabin, Dr. Chen was on her 4th consecutive phone call, her voice growing more desperate with each conversation. Finally, at 10:30, she ended a call and looked at Walter with cautious hope. "I got it. Emergency provisional endangered species status, effective immediately. It's temporary, only 48 hours, but it means any attempt to capture or harm Konah is now a federal crime." She laughed, a sound mixing relief and disbelief. "We actually did it." Walter felt his knees weaken. He sat heavily in his chair. "What happens now?" "Now Miller's team arrives, but their orders have changed. They can't extract Konah. They can only secure the perimeter and assess the situation." Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. "But Walter, in 48 hours, there will be a hearing. Federal Review Board. They'll determine if the protections become permanent, and they'll want to see Konah, want to verify that he's real, that he deserves protection. They want to study him," Walter said bitterly. "No, they want to verify his existence and sentience. I've already submitted your documentation. But the board will need to observe him directly. Brief observation, controlled environment. It's the only way to make the protections permanent." Konah rumbled from his corner, understanding more than Walter sometimes gave him credit for. The creature stood and moved to where Dr. Chen sat. He looked down at her, tilted his head, then gently touched her laptop screen where a document was displayed. "He's asking what it says," Walter translated, amazed as always by Konah's comprehension. Chen pulled up a different document, one with large text and simple language. "This is a protection order," she explained slowly, looking directly at Konah. "It says humans cannot hurt you, cannot take you from your home, cannot put you in a cage. You are protected by law." Konah studied the screen, then looked at Walter for confirmation. "She's telling the truth," Walter said. "For now, you're safe. But in 2 days, you'll have to show yourself to human leaders. Let them see that you're not just an animal, that you think, feel, understand. Can you do that?" The creature was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the wall where the old photos hung, the ones of his family taken 4 decades ago. He touched the frame gently, carefully, the way Walter had taught him to handle fragile things. Then he turned back and made a series of complex vocalizations, gestures, movements that Walter had learned to interpret over 42 years. "He says he'll do it," Walter translated, his voice thick with emotion. "He says if showing himself to more humans means others like him can be protected, if it means his family's death meant something, he'll do it. He's not afraid. Not anymore." Dr. Chen wiped her eyes. "He understands that much?" He understands everything, Walter said simply. Always has. At noon exactly, they heard vehicles approaching, multiple engines. Walter, Konah, and Dr. Chen stood together on the porch as 3 black SUVs pulled into the clearing. Agent Miller emerged from the first vehicle, followed by 6 other agents and 2 people in civilian clothes carrying official-looking briefcases. Miller approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "Mr. Hayes, Dr. Chen, I've been informed of the emergency protection status." He looked past them to where Konah stood in the doorway. "And I've been informed that our mission parameters have changed significantly." "No extraction," Dr. Chen said firmly. "No extraction," Miller confirmed. "My orders are to establish a security perimeter, prevent unauthorized access, and facilitate the federal review process." He looked at Konah directly. "And to ensure that no harm comes to him from any source." One of the civilians stepped forward, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. "I'm Director Patricia Morrison, Fish and Wildlife Service. I'll be overseeing the review process." "Dr. Chen, your emergency filing was highly irregular but technically valid. However, I need to be clear about what happens next." "I understand," Dr. Chen said. "In 48 hours, there will be a closed hearing. Federal Review Board consisting of wildlife biologists, legal experts, and government officials. They will evaluate all evidence and determine if permanent protection status is warranted." Morrison looked at Konah, her expression unreadable. "And they will require direct observation. Non-invasive, no sedation, no confinement. But they must verify sentience, intelligence, and endangered status." Walter stepped forward. "And if they decide he doesn't qualify for protection?" Morrison's expression softened slightly. "Then legal custody becomes complicated. But let me be honest with you, Mr. Hayes. I've seen the documentation Dr. Chen submitted, the journals, the observations, the behavioral analysis. If even half of what's documented is accurate, we're not dealing with a wildlife management issue. We're dealing with something unprecedented, something that challenges our fundamental definitions of personhood and rights." "He's not a thing to be defined," Walter said quietly. "No," Morrison agreed. "I don't think he is, which is why I personally pushed this emergency status through. But the review board won't take my word for it. They'll need to see for themselves." Konah made a low rumbling sound. Not threatening, acknowledging. He stepped fully out onto the porch, his massive frame towering over everyone present. Several agents instinctively reached for their weapons before Miller raised his hand sharply. "Stand down," Miller ordered. "Emergency protection status means he's under federal protection. Anyone who harms him answers to me personally." Konah looked at each person present, his intelligent eyes studying, evaluating. Then he did something Walter had never seen him do before. He spoke, not in his usual vocalizations, but in broken, heavily accented English. "Will not hurt," Konah said slowly, each word clearly difficult but unmistakable. "Want peace. Want home. Want others safe." The silence that followed was absolute. Every person in the clearing stood frozen, staring at the massive creature who had just spoken human words. Dr. Chen recovered first. "You can speak," she whispered. "All this time you could speak." Konah looked at Walter, who was crying openly now. "Walter, teach. Long time. Hard to make sounds, but understand. Always understand." Morrison's professional composure had completely shattered. My God, he's been listening to everything, understanding everything. "Yes," Walter managed to say. "For 42 years, he understands English, can read simple text, comprehends complex ideas. I taught him like you'd teach a child, never knowing if it was working. But he was learning, always learning. He just couldn't vocalize it until now." Miller moved closer, his own weapon now holstered. "Konah, that's your name." The creature nodded, another gesture he'd learned from Walter. "Yes, Konah, Walter, give name, mean, survivor, in old language. Why didn't you speak before? Morrison asked gently. Konah's expression, as much as his face could express, turned sad. Afraid. Humans kill family when they know we know we understand. Safer to seem animal. Walter felt his heart break all over again. 42 years. 42 years Konah had hidden his intelligence, even from Walter to some degree, because he'd learned that thinking, understanding creatures were threats, were killed. Dr. Chen stepped forward slowly. Konah, I promise you, I will fight with everything I have to ensure you're protected, that any others of your kind are protected, that you'll never have to hide again. Konah looked at her for a long moment. Then, clearly, carefully, he said, Thank you, friend. Morrison pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I need to update the review board immediately. This changes everything. Sentience isn't in question anymore. We're dealing with an intelligent being. This isn't wildlife protection. This is, I don't even know what this is legally. Civil rights, Dr. Chen said firmly. If Konah can speak, can understand, can communicate, then he has rights. Not as an animal, as a person. Miller nodded slowly. She's right. This isn't my area, but she's absolutely right. The question isn't whether to protect him. It's how to legally recognize him. And others, Konah added, his voice gaining strength with each word. Others still hide, in mountains, in deep forest, afraid. If I speak, if I show humans we think, maybe others can stop hiding, can live without fear. Walter put his hand on Konah's massive arm. You don't have to do this, we can still disappear. Go deeper into the wilderness. Konah shook his head, another learned gesture. No. Tired of hiding, tired of fear. Time to be seen. Time to be known. Family died so hunters could prove we exist. Maybe. I live so others can be free. Morrison lowered her phone. The hearing is in 48 hours, but with this development, I'm requesting immediate legal counsel. Konah isn't going to be evaluated like an animal. He's going to be represented like a person. This is unprecedented in every possible way. As the afternoon wore on, more vehicles arrived. Legal experts, linguists, anthropologists, all carefully vetted, all sworn to confidentiality until the hearing. They observed from a distance as Konah spoke haltingly with Walter and Dr. Chen, his vocabulary limited but his meaning always clear. By evening, the small clearing had transformed into something between a wildlife sanctuary and a legal proceeding. Tents were erected for the agents maintaining security. Generators powered laptops and communication equipment. But at the center of it all, in his cabin, Konah sat with Walter and Dr. Chen, slowly, carefully, telling his story for the first time in his own words. When I was young, Konah said, his speech improving with practice, my family lived happy. Forest was bigger then. Fewer humans. We gathered food, raised young, had language, had stories, had culture. Dr. Chen was recording everything, her hands shaking slightly. What happened to the others? The rest of your kind? Konah's massive shoulders sagged. Logging, roads, humans cut down forest, kill the elk, the deer, less food, less space. Groups split up, go different directions. My family stayed here, Bluff Creek, our home, but hunters found us, killed us for proof, for money, left me alone. You're not alone anymore, Walter said quietly. You haven't been alone for 42 years. Konah looked at his old friend. No, not alone. You saved me, gave me new family, taught me human ways, gave me life when I wanted to die. He turned to Dr. Chen. Now you save me. Give me hope. Hope that others don't have to hide forever. Outside, through the cabin window, the sun was setting over Bluff Creek. In 48 hours, Konah would face a room of humans who would decide his fate. But for the first time in 4 decades, he wouldn't face it as a hidden creature in the shadows. He would face it as himself, speaking, thinking, demanding to be recognized. And Walter, looking at the friend he'd protected for so long, finally finding his voice, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But they weren't alone anymore. And that made all the difference in the world.